Well, first, let me just say thank you, Jax. Thanks you so much for having us third-party candidates in your forum. I couldn't help but notice that none of the major party candidates were attending tonight. Were they invited, Jax, if you don't mind me asking?
So we invited all of the Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians. Some had pre-existing, events that they were participating in, but we had a total of 9 today, and there were 4 Democratic incumbents that also participated.
Oh, okay. Well, I noticed the congressional candidates, though, tonight there are actually none other than we libertarians, which of course I'm not complaining about, but I think it's kind of a sad commentary sometimes when somehow the major party candidates cannot be bothered enough to actually participate in some very important forums. We've noticed that all of us libertarian candidates have noticed that throughout other forums as well. Somehow often we're excluded as third-party candidates, and other times when the major party candidates are part of the forum, somehow we third-party candidates are unable to, somehow they can't make room for us at that point. So, but again, let me just say, using part of my 5 minutes to thank you again, Jax, for including everybody, all the candidates that are on the ballot, which of course includes libertarians, and in some races, the Green Party as well, and in other races, of course, they're independents. And but let me just say, I completely agree with almost everything that's been said up to this point by, in this case, not only other libertarian candidates, but even the Democratic incumbents who spoke at the outset. I pretty much agree with everything they said, except, of course, for the taxation part. As libertarians, we really are not crazy about any kind of taxes, and so we would decriminalize and legalize all controlled substances, but we would not ever use the argument that somehow the state of Texas is going to raise more money by taxing individual citizens. So I disagree with that, and I also would just like to point out that many libertarians, such as myself, I consider myself a Second Amendment absolutist. And we find, though, often that in the general public, often people try to portray gun owners as highly irresponsible, just maybe a few steps away of becoming a mass shooter. And of course, that's exactly what, when I was growing up in school, we were all forced to watch Reefer Madness. And so the impression that the drug prohibitionists were trying to impart was that, hey, look, you're going to end up, an addict, and marijuana is a gateway drug. And, of course, that's all bogus. And the vast majority, 99% of people who use drugs do so responsibly. And as a libertarian, I would just mention that I think that's also the case with the Second Amendment. The vast majority of gun owners use their guns responsibly, and they're highly effective deterrents to crime. Often, as we've noticed, even throughout the summer, with all the protests, the police do not do a very good job of protecting rights. They seem to do a better job at violating rights. So I would just leave the listeners with the note that, the vast majority of gun owners, by the way, I'm not a gun owner. I'm probably one of the last few males in Texas that doesn't own a gun, and I'm actually not a regular marijuana user. I'm just not. But I know the vast majority of marijuana users and drug users use those drugs responsibly, and they should be allowed to. And it's the same thing for the war on guns. The vast majority of gun owners that I know of, and evidence supports this, the vast majority of gun owners use those weapons responsibly. And the only other thing I would add, if I have a few moments here, is, I kind of digress from this kind of current trend that we have over the last quarter century or so of labeling everything that's bad racist. And I would just emerge from that. I mean, we know, of course, that all racist laws are anti-liberty, but not all anti-liberty laws are racist. And I would include the war on drugs in that category. And I would also note that even if every person who was arrested for drug use was white, I'd still be against the drug laws. And I think that's the case with pretty much everybody tonight. So I think the evidence is not conclusive yet that, the drug laws didn't come about because some white politicians back in the 60s and 70s decided, hey, we know that minorities seem to like to use marijuana and other drug, cocaine or heroin. So let's pass a series of drug laws. I don't think that's kind of how government works. I think most statists, most people, who believe in a lot of government involvement and, believe the government should have a heavy hand in regulating people's lives, do that irrespective of race. And so, again, I would just say, again, all racist laws are anti-liberty, but not all anti-liberty laws and legislation is racist. And I think that's, I would say that's the case with the war on drugs from what the evidence I've seen thus far. But again, thank you so much, Jax, for having all of us here. And again, since I agree with everyone up to this point, I had to just bring up a couple of things that maybe there's some disagreement on. I may have the minority position on that last comment, but anyway, thank you again so much for having us. We really do appreciate it.